been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is now 12 p.m. noon. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present. I ask that you please turn off the sound on all your electronic devices, and we will now move forward on our agenda. The first will be information items. The first will be a teaching and learning update from our Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Barbara Ibarra.
Thank you, Ms. Benford. I'm going to be joined by Mrs. Montoya and Dr. Brian Merrill, who have for years overseen our schools, and we do these things as a team and in partnership. So they're going to also be joining me to share some information to the Board of Trustees. During this update, we have several different topics we would like to cover as a team. One of them is about the A through F accountability system and some new information from the state regarding that. We also want to talk to you a little bit about the Texas strategic leadership opportunity the district has, talk about assessments for learning, and then also how we're using data to inform decision making and what our software packages look like for that. So please bear with us as we go through a number of topics. So let's quickly go over a historical perspective of our accountability system. Over the years, we've probably all been through this before. We've talked about TOS, tax teams. It's quite frequent that the state will go through a changing in the assessment. Assessments are necessary, obviously, to ensure that all of our students are progressing, and we need those to help us see how we're progressing with the curriculum. But however, when the state does make a fundamental change, typically the name is also changed, i.e. teams, tax, TOS, STAR. So you look up there on the screen, the blue is STAR 1.0, the original rendition of the STAR assessment and what it looked like in the state of Texas. And as that evolved, we now have a new version of the assessment, which we call STAR 2.0. But this time, the state did not change the name. And so it's important to understand we're looking at a different assessment with a different accountability system. So in the blue section, you can see that STAR actually came into fruition earlier than this, but with the A through F rating system in 17-18, the district began at a particular level and we progressed all the way to 21-22, where the district received an 86 rating. We have not received ratings since the new STAR assessment has been released, STAR 2.0, and the new accountability system was also released. So let's talk a little bit about those differences. There are two major categories of changes, those to the assessment and those to the accountability system. Let's talk first about the assessment itself and what those changes look like. First, the structure of the questions, which honestly was a very good thing. Students are used to utilizing technology, and with the questions moving to a more technology enhanced interaction and interface, it does make sense and it mirrors instruction, but it is a change for students and it's certainly a change for teachers. So what I mean by that, there's drag and drop, which that doesn't seem very impactful, but when you think about fractions, let's do fractions. You have mixed fractions and you're asked to order them from least to greatest, and there are 4 of them. You must put all of them, drag and drop them into the correct order to get the question correct. So if you have 2 that are transposed, the question is incorrect. So it's no longer a straight multiple choice. There's a lot more that goes on with the question for the student, and they have to be prepared to do that level of computation and then also interact with the technology in a way that puts it in the correct sequence in order to receive credit on the assessment on that particular item. There's also inline choice, highlighting, graphing. Again, all good things, but certainly a fundamental change in the structure of it. But the largest change was in the content area for the assessment. Writing historically had been assessed during 4th grade and then also in 7th grade. Now writing is embedded in all of the assessments, grades 3 through end of course exams in high school, in all subjects. So in mathematics, there is what we call a short constructed response, an SCR, where the students respond in written form about a question. The same thing is true for all of the other subjects. And then of course, with every reading language arts assessment, there's now an extended constructed response, i.e. essay, okay? So all of those changes really fundamentally change the structure of the test as well as the content. When we talk about the accountability system, this was the other major component that was shifted with the 22-23 school year. And this one is pretty impactful. So even if the assessment maintained and was the same, the accountability system itself has different indicators, different cut points, and different methodologies. So much so that the Texas Education Agency released a statement that it's possible that a campus with an A in 2022 could improve and yet receive a B in 2023. That's how much the assessment was fundamentally different and the accountability system was fundamentally different. So it's not apples to apples when you look at the 21-22 school year and then the 22-23 school year. So at this point in time, we were looking at May of 2023, the commissioner actually released a video to school boards. And if you recall, we played it in this boardroom. We're going to go back over it because it's going to be pretty impactful with what's about to be released from TEA in the coming weeks. Mr. Falls, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Okay, you're good to go.
Hello, school board members. My name is Mike Morath. I'm Commissioner of Education for the state of Texas, and I am a former school board member. I served on the Dallas board for 4.5 years, and school board service is critical. When you think about the role that you play in our republic, you are where the buck stops, the governing body of the local school district, and you are responsible for how well those schools work and how well we serve collectively all 5.5 million souls in Texas public schools across the state of Texas. Thank you for your work. It is hard, daunting, and the pay is pretty terrible for a school board member. So thank you for your work. One of the things that I reflect on as a former school board member, one of the responsibilities that I held was I needed to know how well our schools were doing in Dallas. Were they the same? Were they getting better? Were they getting worse? And because it was my job to oversee our administrative team and make sure that we were making progress for kids. And so what the agency does, what TEA does to try to help improve your ability to govern your school district is we provide A through F ratings, which then gives a summative evaluation of all of your schools. And so every year when A through F ratings come out, you can take a look at the ratings. You can then compare them to last year and you can say, are my schools getting better? Are they about the same? Are they getting a little worse? And you can then help build action plans with your administrative team accordingly to support our kids. And what has been true for A through F for the last 5 years, since 2017, is it's been basically the same system. The cut points have been basically the same. The mechanics have been basically the same. We evaluate schools holistically on the better of student proficiency or student growth. As you all well know, evaluating schools is complex. Our little humans are very complex creatures. And so trying to get a single picture of performance is difficult, but A through F does that very holistically. And the fact that it has remained unchanged since 2017 is also super helpful because you can then look at this year's results. Your teachers can look at this year's results. Your parents can look at this year's results and see, is the school getting better? What kind of progress are we making for kids? It was not always like that in Texas with the school rating system. Before the A through F system, the agency, the way TEA worked, would tweak the ratings every single year. That they basically raise cut scores ever so slightly any given year. And that was good in terms of setting goals that are constantly higher and helping us push forward for kids. But it made life really confusing as a school board member in Dallas in my old life because I would have a hard time figuring out, are last year's results the same or better than this year's results? But the downside of what we've done over the last 5 years is we do want to constantly get better for kids. We want to make sure that we are setting higher and higher goals. In fact, the statute that sets up A through F requires us to continuously increase cut scores to ensure that Texas is a national leader in preparing kids for post-secondary success. So this year we are refreshing the A through F rating system. We will be using the information that we've gleaned over the last 5 years, all the feedback that we get from educators, from parents and others to update the way the ratings work. And what that also means is that the ratings that you look at this year cannot be easily compared with last year's ratings. There's a few places where cut scores are actually changing, in some cases going up, and so it will no longer lead to an apples to apples comparison. So to try to make life easier for you, what we are doing is we're publishing preliminary what-if ratings using last year's data, but using the new rating system calculations. And so that way, when ratings come out this fall, you will be able to compare this year's actual ratings with last year's sort of hypothetical what if calculation ratings. And that way you can have a good apples to apples comparison on performance. We're going to also put those hypothetical what if ratings up on texasschools.gov so that when parents or teachers or anybody in the community looks to evaluate year over year performance, they can compare this year's performance with last year's performance using this year's metrics. And so we hope that this helps make the job that you have as a school board easier. But it's also going to be important for all of us to kind of communicate about this to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we'll be communicating more about this in the fall when ratings come out. We have provided your superintendent with hypothetical, what are preliminary what if ratings so they can go over those with you. And there's a lot more details if you want to get into the mechanics of it. We have all that information on our website, provided that information to your superintendent. But I wanted to just talk to you directly about these changes because I knew that this would be important for me as a former school board member, and hope that this is valuable for you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the service that you do for our kids. School boards are critical to the foundation of our democracy and to highly functioning school systems. God bless you for what you do.
Okay, so he's referring there to the 22-23 school year. So that came out in the summer of 23, and TEA did release those what if ratings. So what you're looking at on the screen, in 21-22, the district received a B rating of 86. During that same time frame of 2023, when they released the what if ratings, that same data set that was used to earn the 86 would have resulted in a rating of 75 under the new system. So again, some pretty fundamentally different calculations in the new accountability system, but it's still called the same thing. It's still called A through F. It's still called STAR. But in all reality, it is STAR 2.0 under a new accountability system. So that 75 was an 86, but under the new system, it becomes a 75. Questions on that?
I just want you to reiterate that. So before we even took the test or knew what our scores would be, this what if scenario was saying that 86 just overnight becomes a 75. Is that what you're saying?
That is absolutely correct. So if they used the new accountability system on the prior year data, we wouldn't have received an 86, we would have received a 75 with those assessment results. That's also why TEA released that you could improve in this school year and still receive a lower rating because it is a fundamentally different calculation.
And two things. It's a different calculation. It's a different accountability system,
Yes, ma'am.
which means if we got whatever score we got on elementary, that do this, do that, multiply by 2, divide by 5. It's just a very different calculation on the same scores. But the other thing you're saying is that the tests changed too.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So both things shifted in this moment. So again, that's why the commissioner did the video release to school boards, because it is a fundamentally different test as well as a fundamentally different accountability system, yet it's called the same thing and the ratings have the same titles or labels. And so it can be easily misunderstood and misconstrued as schools not improving when in fact they did improve, yet still received a lower rating.
So, Dr. Ybarra, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In relation to the last legislative session, so that was 3/23, right? Okay, when did this come out in relation to January of 23?
So this was actually in May of 23. That video that the commissioner
Okay.
just had was in May of 23.
Okay, but the test was already in,
Yes, 22, 23 was the year
Right.
they implemented the new test and the new accountability system.
so knowing that, and this is, knowing that vouchers were a huge part of the last legislative session, and this goes on, like us, was the state trending up with their scores, just like Bryan ISD was
Yes.
before all this started? Was the whole state trending up?
In general, yes, ma'am, because we had a stable assessment and to the commissioner's credit, we had a stable accountability system. And
Right.
so you understood what the indicators were. One of the moments of angst is that sometimes these are lagging indicators. For example, prior year graduates or 2 years ago prior graduates. And they're using that in an accountability system where those rules weren't in place when that data was collected. And so whatever the target was, the metrics were, for example, college, career, military readiness. In the new accountability system, to receive an A rating for CCMR, a district had to be 28 points higher than what it was previously set as the cut point. But that was overlaid on a graduating class that was from the year before it ever was even discussed or talked about. And so that's a part of some of the angst where scores were improving, college career readiness was improving, but when the cut points changed radically, people went from an A to a C in those categories with the same results overnight.
And so statewide, what was trending good for kids,
Mhm.
and we had a grasp on what was, we as the whole state, public
Right.
schools had a grasp on what was going on. And CCMR is one of the best things for kids.
Absolutely.
It's just still such a coincidence that all of this happened right before and going on with the last legislative session, and has affected things so much through this legislative session. Sorry.
No, yes,
Just
ma'am.
had to throw that
It's
out.
intentionally confusing, right? It's intentionally designed by the state, very confusing. And it gives us results that are, I mean, unfortunately, it's a letter grade. And so they think
Mhm.
immediately it's easily to be
Well, the whole
understood.
state's been affected.
Exactly.
As we were all trending up,
Yes.
kids were doing better.
Yes, ma'am.
Teachers could
Understood better.
exactly, knew what to teach, how
Yes,
to
ma'am.
get there. Boom, this happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, I want to weigh in one final thing, and I'm glad to see the video again. And I do appreciate that the commissioner was telling the board in our communities that it was no longer, quote, apples to apples because of the significant changes. So to your point with the confusion, when people see that we were a solid B rating with an 86, and then we suddenly drop, according to the what if scenario there, it's not apples to apples. There's
Yeah.
not a controlled variable with this process. So the drops are not legitimate because it's a different test and a different accountability system. So it's really cannot be compared.
And to the commissioner's point, again, a school could improve in 2023 and still receive a lower rating. The district improved in graduation rates. We had improvement, but you're going to see lower ratings under these calculations because it's a different calculation. So let's fast forward a little bit with this. That was in May of 2023. So during that fall, the commissioners still had not adopted an accountability manual for that data set for the 22-23 school year. So in October, the commissioner does adopt the accountability manual for the prior school year. Remember that summer we had the zone of uncertainty with scores, and we didn't know what TEA didn't know what passing was going to be on particular assessments. So we went into the fall not knowing what was a passing score, and also not knowing what the final accountability system would end up being. So then we have court litigation being filed against Texas Education Agency. So the 22-23 results have been tied up in court since that time, and it was for the reasons we just discussed, lagging indicators, that the test itself changed fundamentally, but according to statute, the commissioner was required to validate it as reliable and valid by a third-party entity. That did not happen, and it didn't happen because we didn't change the name of the assessment. So in the commissioner's mind and in TEA's, it didn't need to be validated again because they're recalling it the same assessment. These are all what the courts were saying or what the litigation was saying. And then, of course, that manual wasn't adopted until October of 2023 when the results were 6 months. The kids took the test 6 months earlier, and we still didn't have an accountability manual. Well, recently, last week, that court case has been removed from court. The Court of Appeals has issued its judgment and said that there is no longer an injunction against releasing those scores and those ratings. So in the near future, TEA is expected to release the 2023 ratings that the commissioner was speaking of that are fundamentally different from the prior year of 86. Okay. Also with this, there is an injunction currently for the 23-24 ratings, again, for the same reasons, same things, along with some additional details. Last year was the first year AI was used to grade those short constructed responses and those extended constructed responses, the ECRs and the SCRs. Again, that proved up some litigation. That is still tied up in a court injunction, and those ratings have not been released. But we do expect the 22-23 ratings to be released. And again, just reminding everyone that the what if scores would be the more likely comparison. Although even under the what if scores, I want to draw just a little bit of caution. It is a different assessment. So the what if scores only control for the accountability indicators and methodologies being different. It doesn't control for the changes in the assessment with the content of writing and the technology enhanced items. So that you really can't control for. And while we're calling it apples to apples, it's more closely tied to apples, but there are some pretty fundamental differences when you have writing in every grade and subject, and you did not previously have that. So what do we do? Regardless of the accountability system, and we do believe there should be an accountability system, there should be state assessments. Those inform our instruction, they inform our support structures, but we focus on the kid. So even if we don't have the ratings, we do have the results of the assessment. We know which standards the kids were strong with. We know which standards we have some work to do to shore up. And so we put together different action plans, and you've seen this slide before, where there's shared responsibility between the campus, the district, and the support structures, between C&I, and then also on our improvement planning. So much so that this year we did a fundamentally different approach to our on-site support for schools. And as a district team, we went out to campuses every single week and focused on how do we best support them.
Yeah, and Ms. Montoya, feel free to jump in. We start every Monday, the beginning of the week on campus, sitting down with administration and the teachers, really looking at their plan, talking about their data. All of central office is sort of starts the week there. And it's been a wonderful conversation. We've done it throughout years and previously. This year, it's been intentional to start the week that way. And we've seen great success. So we're going obviously to the campuses and dealing with or working with the principals in any issues or problems or challenges that they have. So talking specifically about student results, all the way down to the classroom, the kid, the teachers, making sure that we're prepared for those state assessments and as a general, and then talking with instructional coaches, all the instructional leaders on the campus to make sure that we've got things covered. And again, we've even taken additionally further in the spring semester, and many of our central office folks are out on the campus, kind of stationary or officing out of there 3 days a week. And that's really just presented a wonderful opportunity to embed that staff in the solutions as they're happening. And so, again, it's been fun to watch the campus grow, to see the teachers anticipate that we're going to be there. There's a portion where we walk through the data, and then we immediately walk the classrooms, and we're giving feedback to teachers. And so we're in and out of the classrooms on a regular basis. Ms. Montoya, would you like to say anything?
You covered pretty much
Okay.
all of it. One thing I will add is we've also been very intentional with looking at the data. And like Bryan said, getting down to the kid level. We also were looking at, some kids are allowed accommodations on the test. We can also look at the number of minutes that each child took to take the test. So I think that there are some kids that don't know that their teachers know how many minutes it has taken them to finish the test. So it's allowed for some really good conferencing and one-on-one with the teacher and the child. Talk about the accommodations that they're allowed to use. Did they use them? If not, why? Because parents were involved in those conversations as well. So it has allowed for really good conversations in looking at the data.
Yeah, we're going to talk in a second about assessments for learning, but when you get down to the kid level, it's all about growth. And that's a very important concept. That's a conversation you can have with any kid. Where are you starting? Where do you need to go? What's in between? Those are conversations that the teachers, the assistant principal, the principals are having really on a weekly basis. Again, all the way down is a very healthy conversation to take the data to figure out where they are. And that's why I think it's really important when you think about the test changing, because you don't want a kid to miss the question and really understand the concept. If we're spending a ton of time talking to the kid and the reality is they didn't understand the the computer, or they didn't understand the actual technique or what was needed of them, then they actually understand the concept, and we're wasting needed valuable time on the concept when it isn't needed. And that's the type of intervention our teachers are doing. They're getting to know the kids, they're understanding where they are, and they're at that point then even some cases grouping them or tutoring them based on their deficiencies.
So additional supports coming in the future and next year. The district applied for the Learning Acceleration Support Opportunities Grant, otherwise known as LASSO grant, through the Texas Education Agency, and we did receive it. It will be a grant that focuses on all intermediate and middle schools and will provide coaching and executive support to the principals and the assistant principals on that teacher feedback piece. So as we go and model on Mondays and give feedback to the principal and the team there and the teachers, they will be another layer of support coming in to support those particular campuses. That will be a 2-year commitment. First year will be teacher observation and feedback, and the second year will be data-informed decision-making, again, just shoring up what that process looks like on each campus. The other thing that's in play right now is something called the Texas Strategic Leadership. This comes from the Texas Education Agency and is funded by them. It is free. We put in an application and consult with our Region Service Center. This would provide a 3-year commitment where the Region Service Center would partner with us to focus on an instructional strategic plan, looking at the desired student experience to improve student outcomes, and would actually be supporting all of our district leadership team as well as many of our campus principals. We should hear about that early in May, but hopefully that will be approved and we'll be able to participate in that program. So we're going to go ahead and move to our third topic, assessments for learning. We have our STAR assessment. That's an assessment of learning. How did we do? But all along the way, we want to know how we're teaching, how we're learning, and if it's making an impact for the kid and what they need differently if they're not mastering it all along the way. So assessments for learning teach us tell us how to modify our instruction to support student outcomes. As we go through our school year, we have several different ways that we do this. We have release tests that we administer that are called benchmark assessments. That's typically in the spring and a small one in the fall. But we also have measures of academic progress, MAP assessment by NWEA. And that is administered at the beginning of the year, typically the middle of the year, although we did not do it this year, and then end of year. And we must talk a little bit about this. As the STAR assessment changed over the past 2 years, we've started to receive a lot of stakeholder feedback about the purpose and need for the MAP assessment, and if it's really an authentic measure of what students are expected to know and how they're expected to show what they know. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Merrill and Ms. Montoya.
Yeah. Clearly, when you're on the campus, as you're out and about, you're talking to the teachers. So we've been doing that for a few years. In addition, Ms. Caramon has a teacher advisory group. She meets with those quarterly, where they're coming in and they're providing feedback. And so there's a whole host of conversations and topics and discussion. And this is one that continue to pop up through the years. And it's an age-old problem. What type of benchmarks, assessments do you give? How long do you give them? When do you give them? This has long been a conversation for years. It didn't matter whether it was teens or tax, or it really didn't matter. But when you look at that benchmarking process, when you look at that kind of as you go thought process and making sure that you're not surprised when the test comes, it's important to really involve the staff and make sure that they're on the front lines. And so we're constantly doing that. From this to budget conversations to anything, we're doing it with them, to be completely honest with you. So when you look at this, we were receiving quite a bit of feedback from not only parents, but from teachers. And the feedback was pretty consistent. I don't think it's anything that you'll be shocked by. And if you had students in school, it was probably something you heard when the kids came home each day or throughout the year. But one was the number of tests that were given. And so when you look at it, the staff and parent concerned about the number of tests students must take throughout the year, that was just an ongoing conversation of, when do we teach and how often do we test? And so we looked at it and made the decision that we would remove the middle of the year MAP testing. The teacher administrator request for benchmarks, when we talked to the staff, they really wanted something that they felt like was a fall benchmark, was more aligned, if you would, with, in some cases, to the STAR test. And so We did that. In a lot of cases, it may have been released questions or released tests, and they built that because they felt like it was more indicative of the way the students would perform. And again, it's the same type of thing, right? If it's any type of athletic performance or any type of performance academically, you want to try to mirror what's going to be in the final on the final test as much as possible. And there are benefits and advantages and disadvantages to each, to be completely honest with you. Then ultimately, they felt like that the MAP test was not really aligned with the new STAR 2.0. And it didn't provide what was the necessary information to drive instruction. Again, we never want to take a test just to take a test. Truthfully, there's an entire process when a student takes a test. You want to sit down with them. They have to be a part of that data. They need to know how they did. They need to know which questions they missed. They need to know why they missed those questions. You have to go back over it. It's going to take time. Even though the test may take about an hour, 2 hours, however long, you're going to circle back around. And it's not only going to drive instruction for the student, but it's going to drive, in a larger sense, the overall instruction for that subject. Our content experts are going to circle back around. They're going to look at it as a whole. So you're not only looking at it from a student perspective, you're going to look at it from a teacher perspective, from a campus perspective, and then from a district perspective to make sure that our curriculum is covering everything that it needs to. And so when you do that, you want to make sure that that assessment is as aligned as tightly as it possibly can be. And to some degree, I mean, the state of Texas just did this by themselves, and they sort of created a problem and an anomaly. And what they did is they almost ruled out MAP. Because it's no longer aligned, because nobody could really catch up because they just didn't allow them to be a part of that conversation either. And so that's really what it amounted to.
So what we did is we pulled together a group of teachers and administrators. Every campus was represented. Every administrator on every campus was invited, along with teachers who utilized MAP in grades 3 through 12. Now I'm going to set K through 2 aside. Right now, K through 2 utilizes it for required screeners, and MAP is one of the approved vendors for the Commissioner of Education. So I'm focusing right now on grades 3 through end of course exams. And we said, okay, what feedback do you have for us? And here are our options. So we can continue with MAP. There are concerns, and again, that analysis that was done across the state showed that there was a greater distance now between MAP being a reliable and valid assessment in terms of STAR prediction than what it was previously because of how much the test has changed. We have a new option. There are several different item test banks that are available now through our region service centers that you can purchase that have the STAR 2.0 like questions and interfaces that would align it more to what students are seeing in the classroom and are expected to do to show what they know at the end of the school year. And so in feedback from teachers, administrators, the curriculum and instruction team, and teaching and learning staff was pretty strongly aligned to moving to a new option and moving away from MAP in grades 3 through 12. Again, we would keep reading fluency with MAP and then also K through 2. Currently, we spend approximately $250,000 annually on the MAP assessment. We would still have a partnership with MAP, but it would be a much reduced price annually. And these test banks are a fraction of the cost that it would take to administer. And we could do it within our own systems with it being graded live time to provide data with teachers to be able to respond instructionally to what that data is telling them. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Any questions?
I just want, Felicia, myself, Julie are on the Teaching and Learning Committee.
Yes,
And you
ma'am.
brought this to us Friday. So it's not new to some of us. And we mentioned that, of course, those of us who sat, at a teacher's desk, I like the idea that you got so much input from teachers themselves and that they can have ownership if we do indeed move away from MAP most. And it's also money-wise going to be more, we're going to save some money at the deal too. But you went into very much detail with us on Friday.
We do believe that the release questions and the test banks will give us a better gauge all along the school year, throughout the year, about how students are performing and how much of the curriculum they're mastering. I know there's always anxiety when we're talking about tests, and really it's about the curriculum. Has the student mastered the curriculum? The only way we really know that is if students can show what they know. And this is one of the ways that we do that all along the year as we progress so that we can pivot and adjust to make sure at the end of the year, they've accomplished everything we intended for them through the curriculum. This would allow us to do that and be more flexible with doing so.
And as a teacher, it's giving them in-house data,
Yes.
in-house test questions, release tests that they can relate to, and they're not pulling process stuff and bringing it in to do the analysis.
So a great deal more customization that's available by going this approach. In fact, let me speak to that. Thank you, Mrs. Waller. So one of the options we've had previously in utilizing data and integrating systems, the board had found us a product called Forecast 5. Frontline actually bought them out recently, but it utilizes 3 different suites: 5Cast, 5Lab, and 5Site. 5Lab was used to bring all of those data elements together, assessment data, attendance data, all kinds of academic data. And that particular software package was invaluable at a time when we did not have access to data visualization tools under our current student information system and enterprise solution, i.e. it was eSchool and eFinance, and now we are moving to Skyward. Under the transition to Skyward, we've already gone through the transition on the business side of the house, and now we're doing the student information side of the house. And we are so excited that those data elements, that data visualization element, will be built in to Skyward as we move forward. That, coupled with a new option through our current platform, Eduphoria, provides a host of software suites that we use throughout the district. One piece in particular is Aware. That's where we house, it actually administers the assessments to the students, so it allows them to take the test online and do STAR 2.0 type question sets. But they have a huge section on the data side for visualization in their new version. And of course, that is an upgrade, but again, the difference is roughly $35,000 versus $250,000. But those two things together, the transition to Skyward and the possibility, pending board consideration in the future, to go to the enhanced version of Aware, would allow us to do much, much more and be much more flexible with student data so that it can be utilized for informing instruction. So we've had a lot of big things kind of developing over the course of a couple of years, and they all seem to be kind of coming to a point in this moment. So pause there. What questions can I answer for you? Or was that more than you ever wanted to know? And it's okay if it was, I understand.
No, I think it's a lot, right? I mean, there's a lot of things happening and moving in public ed right now, and trying to keep people informed is, I mean, as board members, we're in this, and it's very challenging for us to stay up to date with what's happening. So I can
Yes.
only imagine what our citizens feel related to this. It's also important to note that given the bills that have been filed, there's not likely to be any new influx of funding. So we're also suffering from massive budget shortfalls. So it's trying to balance all the things. So
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have our strategic plan update by Deputy Superintendent Dr. Bryan Merle.
I have Mr. Griffin coming up as well. I've introduced him a couple times. You're familiar. He's a face now, fairly familiar. In and around the district, he's got kids in the district, as well as, has been a citizen for a few years. And we've got him out of retirement and put him to work, to be completely honest with you. And it's been a blessing to have him walking around, and I've learned so much in the last few weeks. So I'm very, very thankful for him. We're going to move pretty quickly through strategic planning, and then he's going to get into sort of the facility assessment and answer any questions that you have on that. I'm going to move pretty quick. You've seen these slides before. That's your beautiful picture. We've always introduced you, and we've had a different set of board members every time. That way, everyone can be a part of the process, and we don't have quorum issues. And so we appreciate your participation so very much. So thank you for popping in and for your contribution. These are the individuals leading it. Just a quick reminder of the committee members. This entire boardroom is full. We're very pleased with the turnout. They've are engaged and attentive, and we get in an hour and a half, and every time I'm like, where did it go? It goes very, very quickly. And so I'm very thankful for their commitment. It starts at 4:30 and ends at 6, and they've been great at communicating with us when they need to meet, but also being there. Just a quick kind of mention of what the committee's been charged to do. Your committee, you've charged us to put the strategic planning committee together. And we always talk about the mission, the vision, and then the board goals. And then that little piece of the pie that's the facilities and infrastructure, that's really the piece that we're examining. In some cases, they may have questions in the other areas, and we fill those as they come along. But for the most part, we're just going to do facilities and infrastructure. This last week, we had department updates. They did a phenomenal job, so I'm so very pleased. And just wanted to share a little bit. I kept most of this slide deck in there just to sort of go through it. But we have a wonderful leadership team for our technology department. They're here. They do a phenomenal job, so thank you for that. This is some of the work that they do, from data services to technical support. I'm not going to read through it. It's overwhelming, to be completely honest with you. They did a wonderful Kahoot that I skipped. The questions that the technology department shared for Kahoot were fun. They were very interesting, from the number of Chromebooks to all the hits from the internet. Everything is pretty remarkable, to be honest. And so it was fun. I appreciate that. They keep us going. They do a phenomenal job of not only systemically thinking about things, but then all the way down to the level, making sure that kids have access to devices, and those devices are working. And that's a full-time job for a bunch of people. In fact, we may get to there in a second, but this is instructional technology and cybersecurity. They're constantly looking at ways to make us safer, which we do appreciate, even though sometimes they're hassles, and longer passwords and two-factor authentication, which I think y'all are having to do as well. So we appreciate that very much. These were the areas or needs or discussions or consideration that we spent some time on. And so they went through and just mentioned some things that are kind of coming up. And again, we're part of strategic planning with that little piece of the pie, and that these little pieces fit in there. So I appreciated very much them spending the time and bringing this to the forefront of what we need to think about. Many of the things have been done along the way, but in some cases, they're just outstanding, and we need to get to it. Strategic planning was our safety and security, and Rich did a phenomenal job with that. He's a team of one, although all the campuses are definitely on his team as well. So we're making sure that we're in the vision and the board goals we're living out on a daily basis. We want to ensure physical and emotionally safe and secure learning environment at all times. These are the things that we've done. We're ahead of the statewide mandates. We have our vestibules and intruder-resistant film access control, and our school resource officers, our wonderful relationship with Bryan PD. And then we also have armed security guards, which we're very thankful for. Again, ahead of statewide mandates, we have surveillance cameras, 1,600 district-wide cameras, campus maps, which have become, hopefully we never need to have one, but if we do, we have it. And it gives us up as north and alphanumeric grid, and it gives us access into the building with increased understanding of where the campuses are, just in case someone is on our campus. And then night locks. And again, a lot of these were purchased either through bond, or also we've been very blessed to get grant money. We've used a lot of that money from the state. If they gave us very little, but we used some of it. And then we had a wonderful donation from Don Adams that allowed us to buy quite a bit of things as well. So the night locks were something that gave us additional barricades on the doors. A very simple item that's located near the doors that they can take off out of their little box and then put at the bottom of the floor, and it just barricades the door very quietly, almost you can't penetrate it. Safety audits are a thing. We appreciate the state and TEA obviously helping us with this. We want to make sure we're as safe as possible. We have a required one every 3 years. And then we have a district vulnerability assessment that's conducted every 4 years, and then intruder detection audits. Again, we take this very seriously. We're doing these on the campuses, and we actually want and appreciate the same way that we need accountability. We want this as well. We want to make sure our campus is as safe as possible. We've had incredible results with these. We're very, very proud of it. In fact, they've come back, and the reason that we're able to say that we're ahead of statewide mandates, that's not a term that we just give ourselves. That's one that the experts have told us time and time again, that we've become the standard, most definitely in the Brazos Valley, but in the state of Texas, and what we have just with safety and security. There are some things that he's mentioned that he would like for the committee to consider. One is the vehicle bollards. Those are the items, the big kind of things that are set up front that would, obviously keep any type of vehicle from coming into doors or, again, hardening the exterior, the building. Graphic window film that's not only for visibility, but it also just helps the campus. It makes it just more attractive in general. And then weapons detection. And that's an advanced technology using AI. And it's a very quick system that he has just suggested, not the typical type of metal detection system, a much more sophisticated system that we've looked at. Also, additional considerations were better surveillance technology, higher resolution, and then AI technology. We're seeing that time and time again where AI is able to step in and maybe help make the campuses safer. And then also messaging, message boards, monitors in hallways and classrooms, color LED, just a way to communicate safety and securely with our students, all different types of students, regardless of disabilities. Again, did a wonderful job with that. Transportation department, Pat and Claudel leading that department. Very, very thankful for what they've been doing here recently and just making tremendous success. In case you didn't know this, 147 total employees. 11 staff, 96 drivers, 31 aides, and 9 shop staff. Some interesting facts here. 453 square miles. We are massive. We roll over 10,000 miles per day. Those numbers are just staggering when you start to think about it. 5,000 daily riders, 108 routes, 2,000 field trips each day. Those are numbers that just become staggering. Again, I want to point out they're doing that with 147 people. So there's a lot going on out there. And it's not just getting kids to and from school. By all means, we have to do that. They're all the trips during the day, including even Bryan Collegiate. Bryan Collegiate, every hour upon the hour has to be picked up. Kids are taken out to Blinn and they're brought back. Same thing with C-Tech. We're picking kids up at Bryan and Rudder and we're taking them out to C-Tech. We're thankful for that. Sometimes it goes unnoticed till they're not there. And then when they're not there, we really feel it. So it's easy to see where it'd be difficult when you're talking about 108 routes, over 2,000 field trips a day. There's just a lot of moving parts. And 10,000 miles, I mean, that's however many oil changes. That's just crazy to think about all the oil changes and tire rotations and everything that it takes place to do. So I'm appreciative very much of the work there, entire department. 90 general, I'm moving very quickly. I'll answer questions, but I'm just letting you know the slides. 90 general education buses, 22 ADA buses, 11 field trip buses, 15 SUVs, and 5 microbuses, and no CDL for those microbuses. This is a complicated sort of smaller, we gave this as a handout, but this gives the lifespan of a bus and talks about the delivery time and how much a bus costs. And then it also shows how old our buses are. And so basically, when you think about what it takes to maintain, you want a bus that's obviously maintained and able to roll, and so much goes into it in that maintenance. So we're appreciative of the shop staff. And you can see as the buses are getting older, there's going to be more maintenance that's required of those. In a lot of cases, that's not cheap, to be honest. Engines and transmissions are very expensive. They've gone up in price as well as tires. And so you'll see that 15 of those buses were purchased in 2012, meaning that their lifespan is coming up. And 2-year lead time. Who knew that? 2 years to order a bus, to get a bus. The white fleet, this is just more of what we talk about. This is what you would typically think of just like a Suburban or SUV or some type of vehicle. That's what we call the white fleet. These were areas of need and discussion or consideration. Updated technology. Currently, we don't have driver tablets. What they have is a sheet of paper. And so if a driver comes on board or even a student drops, they're going to have to constantly update those maps. And the drivers, obviously, you could have a substitute driver and they're going to sit down and they're going to take that map and they're going to look at it. And so one proposal would be a tablet that would be on the screen like we have in our cars, and it would show them exactly where to go, coupled with that RFID technology. So all in that picture, you can kind of see what the recommendation is. You've got the tablet right there, and then you've got a student scanning their ID. And that would allow the bus driver to know who's on the bus, who's getting on, who's leaving, where they're going. A lot of the software will just automatically remove if a student's not there that day and they don't scan in, it'll just remove that stop. So the route becomes even more effective and efficient. Comprehensive video technology systems, we're currently using a bunch. There's obviously significant upgrades. When you're talking about a bus from 2012, I mean, you could see where the new buses aren't going to be built the same way the old buses are, and their ability to be able to communicate with cloud systems and all of that is technologies out there. The white fleet with additional buses. So all this was discussed and just kind of given as what some districts have and things that we would like for the group to consider and at least discuss. we threw in and just talked a little bit about the underfunded mandate. So I'll just take a moment to talk about this. We've talked about the massive deficit shortages, and are just two really simple explanations. When you look at the state allotment for transportation, we're going to receive $1.467 million. The cost to run our transportation department is 6.1, meaning 4.7 is going to have to be made somewhere. So it's really just, I mean, it's blatantly obvious they're not giving us enough for transportation. And that's not even counting, like, in some cases, like the cost of the buses. This is just to maintain the fleet. That's, and the drivers and all of those things. So we're woefully underfunded when you look at transportation and safety and security. Underfunded mandate again with safety and security. When you look at it, the state allotment is roughly $500,000. It costs $3.4 million to be able to have Bryan PD and then armed security guards on our campus and some of the other general improvements. So most of those costs are personnel. Meaning it is what it is. You can't really cut it. And so it's just remarkable when you look at what the state has done in the underfunded mandates. And this is just a pretty blatantly obvious example of the way that they do those things. We got into the facility condition assessments. I'm going to let Mr. Griffin talk a little bit about that because he led that section.
Well, as we've been talking about, we've been steadily increasing the tools in our toolbox. I know y'all have heard me use that term, but we do need to bring on our staff to explain and help identify what all has to come out of the M&O budget and where we are and where we're moving with that. So we will continue to bring additional folks in. I think this next fourth meeting, we're going to actually have a general contractor come in as we start looking at pricing. So these are some things that we will utilize to help bring facts toward our board. The issue is, I mean, I've been here less than 2 months, and the more we uncover, the more we realize, the more we look at. Guys, I got to say, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Our staff is absolutely amazing. What we've been telling you is that our life cycles are not, in this past meeting, we talked about how many came up close to, but the previous meeting, we started giving facts about life cycles that are almost double. Industry standard is 20 years for mechanical equipment. We've got mechanical equipment that is 38 years in service and still functioning. Okay? It's incredible. But the issue with that is every good deed does not go unpunished, because the reality is it starts costing you. And that's where we are now. We've got all this equipment that in 7.6 million in deficits from underfunded mandates. Where did that money come from? Y'all tightened the belt. Y'all worked it out. Y'all have heard me use bubble gum and baling wire. That can only last so long. And that is where we are. Issue with that is equipment, structures, all of these things. Yes, they're still working, but what about your indoor air quality now? What about your efficiency? Are you now spending more money to maintain and keep this equipment going? And what's going to happen when it finally takes its last step? Are we going to be in a place to move forward? I don't want to paint a doomsday picture, but we have literally have to start looking at getting back to the center and finding a way so we can do properly maintain and operate moving forward.
Yeah, so we aren't going to go through it, but we talked about the intermediate, the middle, and then what our high school and auxiliary. And I would point out one of the things, the constant feedback that we received is just the work of the maintenance department. Again, I'll call their names out: Mike Cullen, Robert Ureta, and Ron Cooper. Ron Cooper has done a phenomenal job in keeping our HVAC systems up and running. We're so very thankful for those men, the entire department out there, Pat leading that. So thankful for them, and the work that they do out there has just been tremendous. We're very, very pleased and thankful.
Brian, I'll throw this in, sorry, but
You're good.
those, an example of why they're so good at their job. If we're talking about 50 guys and girls, 40 of them went to school here.
They did.
They can walk into a building that they went to elementary, they went to middle school, they went to high school there. They remember those rooms. They may not have ever been sent to the boiler room, but maybe they snuck in it and it's the same boiler that was there. But when we had the horrible freeze, Erie, a couple of years ago, and they worked 24/7 in the snow, in the and sacrificed.
Saving buildings.
Right, they did. And they came in here because we wanted to applaud them. And we asked, how many of you are
Yes, ma'am.
Bryan ISD people? And for the most part, 3/4 of them, maybe even 4/5 of them raised their
Yes,
hand.
ma'am.
And so we're blessed to have people like that. And that's why, another reason, besides them being really good at their job, their hearts are in it.
Yes, ma'am. They were out this weekend. I mean, we all felt the temperature change, right? I mean, it's the beginning of April and it's cold. I mean, and they were making sure the buildings were adequate. And I would love to see everything just turned back on. It just didn't. And they were out. We got calls Sunday and they were making sure that Houston Elementary had air. I mean, they were just making sure everything, and they know where these things are going to have issues. And so they're intentionally on those campuses first to make sure that they're up and running, and then they'll go hit the other ones that have newer equipment. But
Mike and Robert, they're leaders.
Ron Cooper,
Yes, I don't know if Ron's
he is.
okay. So see, their leaders are Bryan ISD people
Yeah,
too.
they're wonderful. So we talked about each campus. Each one's different, even though some of them were built at the same time. It was fun to kind of walk through them in sister schools, but talking just about the various buildings. Again, we're so very thankful for that department. And I think that's it. Any questions for us? That was quick. That was the last meeting that we did. If you were there, you got a little bit longer slide development, but we're very thankful for that.
Could y'all start over from the beginning?
We
I got you
cannot,
a little
no.
late.
No other questions. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to public comments. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes. Comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. Do we have any citizen comments, Ms. Lee? No, ma'am. Thank you. We'll move now to our consent agenda. The board can remove any item from the consent agenda if they so choose. If there are none, I will entertain a motion.
I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Ms. Waller, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez to approve all the items listed on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next, we will move to our action items. Our first action item is to discuss and consider approval of instructional material for K-8 mathematics, and that will be by Dr. Ibarra, Dr. Holcamp, and Ms. Jana Windsor.
Thank you, Ms. Binford. Jana Wenzel is actually our in-house expert on all things instructional materials procurement. So I'm going to actually start it off with her.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. We had the opportunity in the fall, at the end of the fall, to to share a little bit of this introductory information with you, but we felt it would be important to just summarize it again here for this purpose. So we've had some changes from House Bill 1605 to the adoption process, to the instructional materials adoption process. And prior to House Bill 1605, we had the SBOE called for what we previously termed proclamations. And that would be a call for instructional materials that would have an adoption cycle of about 8 years. And with the new process, we call that the instructional materials review process, and also titled IMRA. And in that IMRA process, the state added the review of these materials in terms of high quality instructional materials, which adds some teacher and student supports, among other things. The State Board of Education, after the IMRA review, which we just had our first one, IMRA Cycle 2024, they created a list of approved materials, and that list is a list that we can use instructional materials funding to adopt from. We continued, even with this change to 1605, to have a very rigorous local review and approval process, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. In addition, in the instructional materials and allotment funding, which is state provided funding, has a couple of additional pieces that we'll also share a little bit more about in just a second, but those are going to be titled entitlement funding.
Okay, so when we talk about the prior proclamations, thank you. You'll notice on there, the last time each subject was brought forward by the state of Texas for an adoption of instructional materials. So as Jana mentioned, this past fall, the State Board of Education did its first new version under IMRA. And one of the things we were very excited to see was that mathematics K through 8 was approved. There were certain vendors that were approved for it. You'll notice from the chart here that we've not had new materials for K through 8 mathematics from the state of Texas since 2015. So that was in desperate need of an upgrade and a revisit. So we actually did put that one pretty close to the top of the list for us and began working in January. You'll see here kind of the cycles. She just mentioned cycle 2024. 2024, that was our first cycle. And you can see it's a pretty short list that the state has taken on to adopt materials in those grades and subjects. It's also important to note that they did not actually complete that list because they ran out of time to do so. So Spanish language arts was not adopted this year under cycle 2024. But you can see throughout the process here, we will create our own review process on a rotating basis because there are limited funds. When Mrs. Wenzel talked about the instructional materials allotment, that is a separate account from our district account. That is actually housed at the state where we request things to be purchased from it, but it is not in the Bryan ISD budget or any of the funds here. So it operates a little bit differently than our other allotments, okay? So let's talk about that, Ms. Wenzel.
So the Instructional Materials and Technology Allotment Fund was established in 2011. And that funding, as Dr. Ibarra said, is set aside from the SBOE out of the available school fund. And what can we purchase with that funding? We can purchase instructional materials, of course, technology equipment, and we can purchase related software from that allotment. So what, and this slide may look familiar from the last time we shared a little bit, but our instructional materials and technology allotment fund, we received that in bienniums. And so the new biennium will begin in September of 2025. And that's that first bucket that you see there, that larger bucket. We will continue to receive that funding that's set aside. And again, we'll get that in September of 2025. The entitlement funding that you see up there, so with House Bill 1605, we will now see an additional $40 per student each year into our funding source, and that entitlement fund will not go away. So we can choose to use it this year, or we could hold on to it until we determine we need to adopt resources or materials. The state-developed open education resource entitlement, that will be also available yearly, but it does not accumulate. So it won't stay there. We will just get that $20 per student will be available each year, but it's not going to grow. It'll be available. So if we want to use it on open education state-adopted resources, we can, but we don't have to.
What's the difference between, I'm sorry, my Aggie
You
math
bet.
here, is the 1.2 million for 2 years? Because if it's $40 per student, it's
Yes, that is a wonderful question. This was passed, and so we received last September our first $40, and then this September we received an additional $40. So we have $80 per child in the bank
Thank you.
right now. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what our adoption process looks like, our local adoption process. Of course, our instructional materials committee is going to be formed first. So we're reaching out not just to our the instructional materials group, but our curriculum instruction group, our coordinators will all serve on that initial instructional materials committee. We'll work together with teachers from each of our campuses at whatever grade level subject area we're adopting or looking at considering adopting, and pull those committees together to include teachers. Teachers will review using the rubrics that were created from the committee. And then we will also offer up those resources and materials for public view during this time. So any questions that our community and or parents, guardians have, we'll be able to answer those questions at that time. Our committees look at and choose the top resources or publishers that they would like to see in a showcase setting. All teachers from the grade levels, content areas that we're looking at adopting are invited to attend, and it was well attended this year. And we'll do a publisher showcase, so the publishers have an opportunity. And I'll let Dr. Holtkamp add to that at any point. And then our selection recommendation is what we're bringing to you today.
Yes, and I'm happy to bring to you today our K-8 math recommendation is accelerated learning. It is 100% TEKS-aligned resource, and our teachers really appreciate the K-8 solution because it provides instructional continuity. It has a wealth of supports for our teachers, including materials that are available for teachers, scope and sequence. It also includes lesson plans for internalization. It has extension lessons as well as remediation lessons. It's in Spanish and English, and teachers really appreciated the online format. So if the state made any updates or changes, that the company could make those updates and changes as well. We are bringing this to you today for approval. This is our teachers' recommendations, and there were a lot of teachers. In fact, every campus and every grade level was represented in the decision. And we believe that this digital material allows for customization, and our teachers really like that idea. They're able to customize and meet the individual needs of our students with this product.
So I'll finish it up here with just sharing a little bit about our next steps. The next agenda item you'll see is to complete the certification of provision of instructional materials. So we will ask the board in just a few minutes to do that. And then finalize order through our TEA instructional educational materials system, which is also called EMAT, and that's where that funding sits that we were talking about just a little bit ago. It comes directly from the state. And we've looked at just kind of an approximate prediction of the materials that Dr. Holtkamp just talked about and what that purchasing dollar amount might look like. So you can see there an approximate estimate for a 1-year adoption of this product, also a 2 and a 3-year adoption of this product. So we have the flexibility with EMRA to choose the duration of the adoption. And then we also always anticipate that the materials will be here during the summertime, and we will have them in the teachers' and the students' hands prior to the start of school.
On this slide, so is it $1 million in year 3, or is it 396 and then you add the
We'll purchase, we can get 3 years of this product with
For
a
$1 million.
one-time purchase of $1 million.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted, perfect. Thank you.
No, great question.
I've got a question. So this is for a digital solution?
It has, I'll let Dr. Holtkamp speak more to it, but it does have a physical components and digital.
So there are
components.
classroom aids that accompany the digital product that my understanding is that in the past there was some classroom aids that were necessary to accompany some of the digital instruction. Is that inclusive in the fee, or is that a additional cost?
It's inclusive.
It's inclusive.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yes.
But yes, there are digital components, and that's really what was attractive to the teachers, is that it had so many components that they could use. In fact, a student that may be particularly low in an objective or an SE, they could assign them a task that's online, and they could customize lessons to meet the needs of the students and take them wherever they are. So that
Okay.
was very attractive to the student, and to the teachers for the students' needs.
Are there any physical components that are
Yes,
aids to lessons that,
Yes.
that go into the classroom?
both.
Okay.
Joel likes books. He's a book guy. So
Well-
that's what he wants to know, are their books.
Yeah, to his point, a lot of our kids prefer a consumable or a printed copy. So the teacher would have discretion to print accordingly.
They would.
Not all kids thrive in the digital world. So a good balance is key. So is that what you're saying?
Yes. There's an opportunity for both.
Okay.
Although we're now assessed by the state of Texas in the digital world. So that balance again is key. But I too am a print person.
Yeah,
So I appreciate being able to send it to the print and for the kids to have
Absolutely.
pencil paper. I think we have to teach it both ways for our kids to have that good, well-rounded experience.
Any other questions?
Any other questions from the board?
No, ma'am. I move to approve the selection of Accelerate Learning STEM Scopes Math as the instructional materials for grades K through 8 as presented.
Second.
You
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Gonzalez, a second by Mr. Bryan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we will have, discuss and consider the certificate of provision of instructional materials. That will be coming from Dr. Barbara Ibarra and Ms. Julie Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Binford. As we previously mentioned, this is a requirement prior to any ordering of new materials each year, and that the state of Texas requires us to bring forward to the board the survey of provision of instructional materials, basically stating that we have the instructional materials that cover 100% of the standards of the state of Texas, and that we have them available to our students and to our teachers.
Do I have any questions from the board? I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the TEAC certification 2023-24 form and survey as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Waller, second by Mr. Stennis. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is consider approval of the purchase over $50,000 for the turf replacement at Merle Green Stadium. Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Kevin Besaw, be joined by Executive Director of Athletics, Mr. Derek Rush.
Good afternoon. So we're going to share with you the needs as far as returfing the field there at Merrill Green Stadium, as far as the why and the purpose of that why, from that standpoint of it. So the artificial turf at Merrill Green Stadium was installed in 2016, and it was lifespan typically ranged from 8 to 10 years. Given the high volume of activities the stadium experiences annually, the turf has significantly worn down, and it has now reached the end of its lifespan. The existing turf is no longer providing the necessary performance or safety standards. And so when we look at that and we see the why of replacing the turf, number one, safety. Worn down turf can lead to an increased risk of injuries for our student athletes, which is a significant concern. And number two, as far as the playability, the field wears and tears hinders the overall quality of playing surfaces while directly impacting performance. And number three, durability. A new turf field will provide long-lasting benefits, ensuring that the facility maintains performance at their best without the risk of injuries. And so when you look at the amount of traffic that the stadium holds over a course of a year, when you look at football playing there, soccer playing there, band practice, and those type of things. And also, since Bryan is a central located city, we have a lot of playoff games between schools in Houston, Dallas, and in the Austin area. And so that impacts it as well as when football playoffs are taking place and soccer as well. And you also look at all the outside events that takes place at Merrill Green Stadium when it comes to family outreach, our fourth grade track meet and things of that nature that takes place during that annual time. And so, again, right now, the age of the turf is 9 years old. And like I said, the life cycle is between 8, 9, 10 years. But based on the high volume of activities that take place at Merrill Green Stadium, it needs to be turf. When you look at the stadium right now, as far as the condition of it, I mean, you can walk the field and the fibers come up, and that's not supposed to be happening. And also, you look closer, if you walk around the stadium, grass is starting to come through the turf. And so it's vitally important that we move forward in providing a safe environment for our student athletes when it comes to that standpoint of it. And so to kind of go back in history as far as looking at our options, as far as when we first were looking at replacing the turf, knowing that the financial cost, given the state that we're in right now, our first option was to seek a sponsor for naming rights for the field, as far as seeking a sponsor that will take on that cost and giving them the naming rights, meaning we will put that company logo on the field. And we're still in the process of getting that done. But unfortunately, right now, nobody stepped up in taking on that responsibility. So that will be an ongoing process as far as seeking a sponsor to sponsor our returfing of our field. But it's such a vital, important aspect of keeping our kids' safety. We need to get this done before the season starts in August. And so that's why we're reaching out and seeing, moving forward, get this done this June, and it'll be done by July.
Mr. Rush, may I ask you, I'm sure someone's going to ask us, so turf versus grass. I mean, why are we going with turf? I know we have lots of reasons, safety and all, but would you please give us a little bit of information on that?
Well, the overall annual cost of keeping up a grass field compared to turf over a long period of time, watering the field, fertilizer, and those type of things, maintenance of the grass compared to turf. Again, the high volume of activities that go on at Merrill Green Stadium and versus using grass and having our maintenance people maintain that, it would be awfully.
Costs more than this.
Yes, no doubt, no doubt.
Okay, thank you. I just remember in 1989, it was so much fun watching the mud show. So, but thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that we have looked at that option and that it's more cost effective to go with turf.
Yes.
Well, we hosted the intramurals games over the weekend after a big rain. And so I'm sure that the utility of the turf allows you to host those events rather than cancel them. And, so I think there's the added benefit too, that you can, even though with the weather component, you get to still host events and play events.
Oh, no doubt.
Cancel.
Yes.
And I do know that as far as utilization of taxpayer money, the field is not open. I mean, we hate it because a lot of people can't come just walk the track. But due to the warranties on these turf fields, part of it is that we guarantee people aren't going to come in and dump red Gatorade on the turf and things. And so part of saving the taxpayer money to keep the field in good condition as long as we can, it is closed to regular foot traffic. So we want people to know that we protect it. And so that doesn't add to the shortness or longevity. I mean, the opposite of longevity.
Yes, for sure.
We've heard other presentations today and for the past several months about budget shortfalls and those kind of things. This is a big ticket item. So tell me more about the safety. So I get it. Things are faded and there's pieces that end up in your shoes when you walk across it. That may be a nuisance, but that's not a safety issue necessarily. So tell me more about the safety reasons that this needs to be done now.
Well, the main safety reason is that the companies come out and do what they call a geomax test, where they test the softness of the field and the mobility of the field from that standpoint of it. And we had 3 companies, the Paragon and also Hellas and symmetry, those three companies came out and did their GeoMax test. And that also based on the hardness of the field when a kid falls on the field. I mean, as far as concussion areas, that plays a huge part in that. And so right now, when they came out and tested the fields, the Merrill Green Stadium field failed that test, GeoMax test, which determines the softness and the playability of that field based on concussions, injury prevention, those type of things. And so that's is crucial as far as moving forward and providing, again, like I said, safety for our kids when it not only injuries, but also concussions in this day and age when that is highly looked upon as far as the predetermining and also preventing those concussions, things of that nature.
Well, and it's interesting because I've done a little bit of research in the past on turf versus grass and injury prevention. And, it's not really decided, like which I see a lot of college fields going back to grass turf because of safety reasons. I get that they don't have as much traffic as perhaps we do, but my biggest concern now is that given our budget deficit, this is, a big ticket item that's coming at a time where we're having to say no to things. But we want to be sure that we can support this as a district-wide state. Our students use it. But the other thing I wondered about, Mr. Rush, is as we use this field for other events that are not Bryan ISD events, what is our cost recovery approach on that? Do we let folks use it for free? Are they paying for it? I'm just thinking long term, like, gone are the days where we can just say out of the goodness of our heart, this is what we're going to do. We have to be looking at how do we replace it in another 10 years?
Correct. So let me start by first asking your first question as far as the deficits and things of that nature. That's one thing that came up when we first initiated licking and replacing the turf. So that is an ongoing process that we still would be looking for a sponsor to sponsor to sell the cost of the resurfacing. From that standpoint of it, it may take 2 months from now. It may take a year from now from that standpoint. But I'm almost sure that we can find a company that would sponsor the cost of the field from that perspective of things. But as far as the time frame of getting it turf before the season, we're resorting to this option here as far as asking the district to take on the cost. But as soon as we find a sponsor to take on that responsibility, naming rights, that money funds would go back to repay the district for the cost of the resurfacing of the field from that standpoint.
Mr. Rush, this is coming out of a bond anyway, right? So it's not coming out of our operating budget. Is that?
Kevin, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's correct. So when we, as Mr. Rush said, when we looked at this originally and looking at getting a sponsor, we did what we call an RFP to go out and have that done. But it's a fairly new thing for high schools, so it didn't go as quickly as we thought it would or might. And so that's an ongoing process. But as we said, in order to get it accomplished and finished by the time the season will start in the fall, this would be an option to do that. So we do have enough funds in the 2014 and 2019 bonds, which those were both bonds that were done before the legislation that put this into a thing where you would have to have special bond referendums. So this would be an allowable purchase for that with those bond funds. There's approximately in the two combined, yet there's approximately $1.3 million. So you know what the amount is. We do have sufficient to do that. And then when we do get the sponsorship going and get that moving forward, we could either repay the bond or we could put that aside to have that available for the next time we need to surface, or there's other things that may be needed for that. So
yeah, because we can't use bond funds, for example, to increase teacher salaries, right? So I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
if people see this and say, "Oh, we're making those choices," we can't use those funds for that anyway.
Yes, ma'am,
my concern is, it sounds like it needs to be done, and of course, that's our job is to consider those things. But looking ahead, how can we really manage this big expense that's recurring.
Well, one of the things we're going to be looking at as far as a recycle placement, recycle schedule as far as dealing with athletic facilities from that standpoint of it. So that's something we'll be visiting with Kevin and Melissa about as far as a replacement cycle plan. Other districts I've been in, we've had that, and so that's something in the future that we'll be looking into as far as having a scheduled plan as far as we know that this turf is due in 8 years, have a plan set to go ahead, move forward in purchasing that. And to answer your last question about the rental, renting all our athletic facilities, we do have that in place as far as we do cost as far as that's concerned, as far as that is concerned. And so we're looking forward and looking into increasing that rental fees compared to other districts in the area.
Derek, have we done any reference checks on Paragon Sports about previous jobs they've done, how they've performed on time, on budget,
Yes.
et cetera?
Yes, we have. Paragon, we worked with them 3 times now as far as they resurfaced the track at Bryan High School. They also resurfaced the track at Rudder last year, 2 years ago, and also they resurfaced the track at Dobler Middle School. We reached out to Temple. Most of you guys probably want to hear that, but we reached out to them and they turfed their field 3 years ago. And I know some of you guys may have been to their stadium this past year, and it still looks like new. And so we've done our due diligence as far as reaching out to different districts, and most of their work is done in the Austin, Dallas area, but we have done business with them in the past.
Does the lifespan of AstroTurf vary across vendors, or is that pretty consistent?
That's pretty consistent, like I said, but given the volume of events that go on at Merrill Green Stadium, that speeds up the process of the lifespan.
So maybe if it's really nice, we could think about having graduation on a brand new turf soon to get another. We would save a lot of money not renting Reed Arena and have a beautiful graduation on our turf field.
I move approval for the replacement of the turf at Merrill Green Stadium to Paragon Sports in the amount of $697,664 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Harlan, Dr. Harlan, second by Mr. Bryan. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we will have consider approval of a purchase over $50,000 for replacement of kitchen and cafeteria equipment. That will be presented to us by our Director of School Nutrition, Ms. Sandra Baxter, and our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Mr. Kevin Beesaw.
Yes, ma'am. While the ladies get up here and get situated, I'll just mention, we also have Miss Cindy Fry-Rear, who was the previous Director of School Nutrition. And this purchase is one that we've brought some things forward before and talked about the plan that the food service has to do. This is one of our very efficiently run departments, and the issue that they have, their funding source is a separate source, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Texas Department of Agriculture, and they monitor the things very closely. So what they have issues over the years is basically an excess of fund balance. And so what that means is that the state TDA will say, you have to put together a plan to spend this down to the acceptable level. And so then they will approve those expenditures and things like that. So this is one of those purchases which is approved by TDA, and I'll let Ms. Baxter and Ms. Fry-Rear go over the actual what they're proposing.
Good afternoon. This spin down plan is specifically targeting Johnson Elementary. It has a lot of original, one of the most expensive things that we're replacing there is the serving line. And I know I worked here for 30 years, so it is older than 30 years. But the other is the fire suppression and the exhaust system that is up in the ceiling. It is original from the 1974 when Johnson was built. So that's an a very big part of this expense at Johnson Elementary is having someone come and remove the old exhaust system and put a new fire suppression system, because when we have this inspected every year, a lot of the parts to replace it are obsolete and we're having trouble getting them. So we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off and try to fix everything in that kitchen with a new serving line and new pass-through equipment. And the new serving line would help, it would have frost tops where we could set the trays down to keep our fruits and vegetables cold. So right now the current serving line does not have that. So we have little ice baths, or we just move it very quickly in and out of the refrigerator. And then because we were doing an RFP to include a lot of equipment, we went ahead and added, Bryan High School needs a replace a reach-in freezer and a heated cabinet, and then we're going to replace the steamer at Houston. And so this was part of a spin down plan that was put in place before I left last April. And so we have till June 2025. And so this was a big part of it. And we have some other projects that we will also be doing.
Ms. Benford, I move approval for the replacement of the kitchen and cafeteria equipment listed to A Smart Restaurant Supply in the amount of $694.35 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Gonzalez, a second by Mr. Stennis. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Next, we have consider approval of a purchase over $50,000 for the workers' compensation and liability third-party claims administrative services by Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Mr. Kevin Besaw, and Assistant Director of Benefits and Risk Management, Mr. Michael Stires.
Yes, ma'am. While Mr. Stires comes up and gets situated, I'll just mention the process of this is a third-party administrator to help out with the workers' comp administration and claim service on that. We can talk about what all this process involves, but we went through a request for proposals and received from two different companies on this, and they both were fairly comparable. We scored them with a team of course, Mr. Stires, myself, and campus representative, and another representative also that I believe is Mr. Pat Corbett also was on that, representing auxiliary in that. So the areas that most deal with this weighed in on these and proposed that we go forward with this one. If you want to go through any part about what this process does, or what they actually work on, help us with.
Yes, so, excuse me, this companies, they handle all of our claims administration that we have to submit to the state of Texas. There is a time requirement that we as the employer are required to submit claims once we receive them. And so that's just part of that, staying compliant with that, making sure that we're utilizing the best resources we have available, as well as the most financially responsible and resources that we have to be able to explore as well. So they handle from end to end claims, as far as the first report all the way to getting in front of a judge with the state of Texas at the work comp division board.
Is this the same company we've been using, or is it a different one?
One of the two companies is that bid on this is our current TPA as we speak.
Is that the one we're recommending to go with? Okay, just wanted to be clear.
So do they handle everything? And I see it says up to 60,000. So if they have to take it from the initial investigation to trial, is there a different, I assume there has to be a different cost to us. Is that how that works, or is it an all-inclusive?
So there is a cost per medical claim, cost per indemnity claim, there's no cost per just normal reporting. And so there is, to your point, yes, so there's different stages to this, but the initial medical claim is going to be a set price, but then it comes into the BRCs, the CCHs, as well as the attorney's times on all of those BRCs with the state.
Okay, so
The
there
BRC
is
is a
additional,
bit-
if you go to trial, you're going to pay the attorneys. I mean, it's not one of those like an insurance where you pay a set fee. Okay. That's worth checking. Those dang attorneys, tell you.
I move approval of CAS Claims Administration Services for Workers' Compensation and Liability Third-Party Claims Administration Services not to exceed $60,000 annually as presented.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Holland, second by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.074 and 551.0821. No voting will take place in the closed session. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in the closed session will result after the board reconvenes in open meeting. The time is now 1:34. The board reconvened in open session at 2:18 PM. No action was taken in closed session.
Oh. Motion for consideration. I move approval of Norma Friddle as the Chief Financial Officer, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services for Bryan Schools as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bryan, second by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 2:19 PM.
I also want to remind, I mean, this isn't business, but
Okay.
we're doing our best to reschedule our Bryan ISD showcase. We're working with Destination Bryan because we sure want to reschedule. So we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
Since we're in bad weather. Every Friday night it'll be.
I was joking to fall asleep.